And welcome to No Apologies, Please. I'm your host, Gregory Meriweather. And today, man, we got a special show lined up. You know, this is actually one of the first shows we've recorded, so it's going to be fun. So we'll have this on audio and on video, so I'm excited about it. We've got two special guests. One is she's local. It's Lisa Schmitz. I know her husband. We've done some work together. She's actually doing a lot of work in the city of Indianapolis. And then our other guest is going to be Mr. Fitz Hill, Dr. Fitz Hill. I believe it's Dr. Fitz Hill, is it? So he's from Arkansas. I've done a little. Both are from Arkansas, I believe I'm correct. And so this is going to be a show where we're really going to dive into what they're doing. We want this show. This is not just a local show. This show focuses on people all around the country who are doing some magnificent stuff. And we really want to just get to know what it is that they do and pretty much how it's helping to impact the world. So without further ado, man, let's bring our guest on. Here we got Lisa. Here we got Dr. Hill.
Hey,
how you doing, man?
Good. How you all?
Man, I'm wonderful. How are you, Lisa?
I'm doing great.
Good, man. Well, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you both on. Lisa and I were talking, and she's like, "Man, this guy, you got to meet him. You gotta talk to this guy." And I said, "Okay, well, if you say so, then I'm rolling with you." So we'll go ladies first and let Lisa introduce herself. And Lisa, you go ahead and you tell me who you are. Tell the crowd who you are.
Well, there's a lot to who I am. I'll tell what's the most recent and appropriate, I guess, for Indianapolis.
Sure.
I consider myself a small business owner, a nonprofit founder, a community activist. I have tried to run for office a couple of times because of my inspiration to better my community. And so that's of late. I'm a former HR executive. We could go way back, but Dr. Fitz Hill and I have known each other since probably kindergarten.
Really?
And I think it's really pretty funny when you started to introduce him, you said Mr. Hill, and then you said Dr. Hill. And I'm going to let Dr. Hill introduce himself and tell you why that little quote was so funny to me.
Okay. All right, Doc, go ahead, man. I want to hear it.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me. Hello, Lisa. How you doing? My classmate.
I'm great.
Yes. I'm originally, people call me, I like to go by Coach.
Okay, Coach. I like that better. I like it.
I do too. Yeah, I have the terminal degree, but I coached for 20 years. And while I was coaching, I got my doctorate. And so it's something I use today doing research, but I'm a coach. And that's how my grandson calls me Grand Coach. So that's my name right now. So that's my favorite title now, Grand Coach. But yes, I coached for 20 years. Lisa and I are classmates. Probably we had a crush on each other, and back in the kindergarten, first, second grade. We were really close friends, and but we were in the rural South at that time. So but we always have been like brothers and sisters in a sense, and just have always had a great relationship. And
Sure.
And I coached, and her dad called the first tech on me in basketball I ever had. Her dad was a referee. So
Shame.
Yeah, he did. I put the ball down. He blew a whistle. He called walk on me, and I just put the ball right down. I didn't even give it to him. He teched me up, man. And it's first tech, and only tech I've had called him in my whole life.
Oh man!
But you had fair warning. He told me to tell you. I'm going to call it on him. If he does it to me, I'm calling
quite
it.
memorable.
And he
that'll lay with you, Coach. The first and only tech that you've ever had is by her dad.
Exactly right. That's exactly. I wasn't trying to be his call. I just put the ball down, But I guess he wanted me to hand it to him, So
It's in the book. It's a rule.
You can see her. She about a book now.
No doubt.
She's about a book. And after coaching for 20 years, I was assistant head football coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Then I moved to California. I was a head football coach at San Jose State. Then God called me out of the coaching profession, and I became what I call education evangelist, and I became president of Arkansas Baptist College, a historically Black college started in 1884 by former slaves, and did that for 10 and a half years. Then I stepped down, and now I'm in kind of like Lisa, I'm in nonprofit work, but my life purpose and goal now is to bring awareness to the number one cause of death for Black males aged 1 to 44, and that's homicide. So I had a young man murdered on my campus as president, and I had to call his mother and send his body home, and that changed my life. And it happens 30 times a day in America. And I know we say Black Lives Matter, but my research is really advocating and ask the question, does Black death matter?
I like it. So, so when I look at this, is that the foundation that you're running, Coach?
Yeah, I actually have, I'm president now of the Arkansas Baptist College Foundation. I stepped over from the college, and with that, underneath that, it's the Derek Livy Research Institute for the Prevention of Violence, which works underneath that. But I also has started another with the Little Rock School District that works with the Little Rock School District Athletic Foundation that works with mentoring young boys in a football program that I have for middle school football, that we have mentors working with them during the year. And so I'm involved in that in my church work that I'm an outreach evangelist that work in connecting things throughout the city to build the kingdom.
I love it. So I would take it that the young man's name is the one who was
Derek. Yeah, Derek. Okay. Derek, a young man that had never been in trouble, played football, recruited his it really was a day, September 27, 2012 at 7:27 p.m.
Wow.
Young man walked in campus with no hope, pulled the 9mm out. We got on tape. It was and opened up and hit Derek 3 times, and he stumbled over the campus and bled to death and died. And had to call his mother, and she's, it was like yesterday. She said, "Dr. Hill, I gave my son 2 choices. I told him he could go to the Army or he could go to college." She said, "I thought if he went to the Army, I would expect a call like this." He said, "But I sent him to you, and you calling me and telling me my son has been murdered." And so it totally devastated me with a Black son, 2 Black grandsons, and a Black son-in-law, knowing that day happened. That call happens 30 times a day in the United States of America. And unless it's a Black male killed by the police, or a Black male killed by somebody outside our race, a rapper or a Black athlete, we're like crickets. And so the goal of the Dory, and the First and 45, which is the newsletter that I produce and the show that I have weekly, First and 45 with Coach Fitz Hill. And the goal is to get Black males to 45, because if you give them to 45, you're out the danger zone, and then you become grandparents. You do that, you mentor. So if you get Black boys to 45, we're out that deal. But it's so hard that we end up getting Black boys. They don't make it there. And like I tell, hey, if once you get to 45, the number one cause of death is heart disease. So if you want to go to McDonald's and eat, that's your choice. I just don't want you to get killed going to McDonald's. Yeah.
So First and 45 with Coach Fitz Hill, identifying social determinants contributing to the homicide epidemic of Black males before the age of 45. Black males' lives lost in the U.S. in 2023, approximate calculation is 10,560.
Yeah.
And time until the next death is 47. And that's
every 47. And when you go back, you do the math. And the thing, Gregory, that's I'm totally consumed with this, because as I said, this happens every day. And then I see us respond. I'm a veteran of Desert Storm, decorated Bronze Star, proud of that.
Service.
And the thing that I realize is that we can go everywhere else all over the world and repair problems in foreign relations, but we can't stop the problems in our own city. And I've seen us do it. I saw us move Saddam out in 7 days. I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
But you can't move this guy out in
And
seven in the neighborhood.
we can't stop anything in our country. And I realize there's a racket going on, and and I want to expose what's going on in our country, because it's death that we're not doing anything about.
Yeah. So Lisa, with when you hear that, and I mean, kind of from a political perspective, I know you ran for office, and when we see a lot of things where gun laws, especially like you see the gun laws in Indiana, we just kind of let it be. We've got a really heavy stand your ground. We've got a really heavy. We've got permitless carry, things of that nature. I've talked to some people. I earlier in the month, or maybe late last month. Yeah, late last month, I had one of the candidates for governor on. And when I talked about, gun issues or gun control issues, he didn't believe it was a gun control issue. He believed it was a matter of the heart. What are you, when you hear those things, and knowing Dr. Hill, when you hear those things and he gets the statistics, and this has been your friend for years, what does it say to you when you hear things being said by political figures that say, I really don't see it being a gun issue? How does that register with you?
So with me personally, I think it is a lot of both. And I know that's like a typical political response. But where I come from personally, is that in Indianapolis, what scares me the most is people like Fitz Hill will send me news things or statistics related to my city, and he doesn't even live here. That's when I know we have a problem. When I hear the mayor of Dallas come to Indianapolis and talk about what he's done in Dallas to help curb these kinds of issues, and then I hear the things here that we're not doing, and he knows more about our city statistics than we do, that's when I know we have a problem. But I think part of it goes back to something else that Fitz works on, is the male figures in the homes. And so many of these kids don't have father figures, and the lack of mentorship and things like that to get them on a different path. Yes, they have a gun in their hand. We need to address how they got the gun in their hand. But we also need to address the mentality and the attitude that let them believe that that's okay. So I think it's just so many things. And I think we need a lot of different people, a lot of different categories of people working on these issues, like his First and 45 and all of the other. I mean, he talks about this stuff every day on more shows than just his own. And the fact that it's such a passion for him is something that I wish we had more of here in Indianapolis.
So Coach, when you hear that, and then you think about some of the things, the nuances that kind of get lost in the sauce per se. When I remember vividly watching the documentary. I'm telling my age right now, but I remember watching Banging in Little Rock.
That's right. Yep.
And
it's true. It's true.
Well,
and and it was gruesome. It was rough. And when we think about just guns, and a lot of kids carry now because they believe they live in an environment where it's necessary. Like when I listen to the Marion County prosecutor say that a lot of the kids that are now catching gun cases, that's their first case. They don't even have a traffic ticket. They've never done anything else wrong. And then all of a sudden, the first case they ever catch is a body. How does that, how do you, when we hear all these other, when we hear points of views, governmental points of views, prosecutor point of views, all these points of views. But again, when we realize that the area in which a lot of our people live in are rough. And a lot of kids grow up saying, I'm not trying to die today, so let me figure out how to get a gun. How do you quell that issue right there?
No question, and it is a complex issue, and there's not one response or one answer to the complicated challenges of curbing, or what I'm saying, reducing the gun deaths in our nation. But I want to say this without reservation: it can be done. I've sit in rooms with generals. I've seen how we've made a decision. I've landed in Daharan. I took a Humvee to KKMC. I saw the 18th and 7th Corps come in. I saw us merge what we're going to do. I saw us deploy way around the world on how we're going to fix a problem. I've been to Rwanda. Okay. I after the genocide where nearly 1 million people were killed in 90 days. I've been over there twice. It's now the safest place in Africa. Now, Rwanda. Now, if you're going to tell me the richest country in the world with 300 million people that can do anything, we can send man to the moon. We can do anything we want to do. If you're going to sit here and tell me that our legislators and our people can't make some type of what I call disruptive investment into the United States of America to change the trajectory, here's the deal. And I'll say this, and if I'm lying, please correct me. I want to be corrected. I'm like Google. I'll repackage it and I'll send it back out. Because I'm not perfect, but that's what research and development is. So, but the fact that the most of the deaths are coming from the permanent underclass of Black people. If there were, when you hear opioids, you see how much money is going in opioids research today.
Come on.
All right. When you start seeing all these different things, we see everything's come up. You see legislation being changed. That's not happening with this population. Why? Because 2% of the population, okay, in the United States of America is responsible for over 50% of the homicides. Think about that.
Say that again.
2%. Now, you and I, all right, make up 6.7% of the Black males in the United States of America. The Black population is 13.8%, right at 14%. Black men make up 6.7% of that population. Other make up women. In the United States of America, you and I are not killing each other. We're out trying to be productive and taxpayers and hoping that we can create a better place for others to do what our Constitution says: pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why in the United States, and when we say on our money and God we trust, we can't trust walking down the street? Why? It's because we do not want to deal with the facts of what it's going to take to transform our communities to what it used to be. When Lisa and I grew up in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, Southwest Arkansas, you realize in 1959, I have a picture of my mother right now in Arkadelphia. She was 6 months pregnant with my older brother, 1959. In that photograph, 92% of all Black families were led by men and women. 92%. Today, 28%. We have the winning solution. We have the winning game plan. All right. But what data tells us, in which we'll tiptoe around, is that a Black male born to a teenage mother in poverty, okay, which if you go back and look and see where the 2% permanent underclass comes from, all right, it's majority that population, because what you realize, it self-perpetuates continually, just reinforce what happens. So a child born into that situation has, when the egg hit the sperm, has a 2-to-1 chance of going to prison.
Sure.
Out of social determinants. What we have to do, Greg and Lisa, we have to address, that's why I said identifying the social determinants responsible for this epidemic. This is an epidemic. The CDC, I was at a conference in Wisconsin this past summer that says since 1970, this has been an epidemic in the Black community and nothing's happened. Now, when we had COVID, what do we do? But see, it's who the epidemic is affecting.
Exactly.
All right.
And I said that about COVID. I said one of the things that I believe was going to happen is that it would have a tremendous impact on the African American community simply because of the health disparities.
Right.
And so when you it's almost like when you know it, we can know these things, Coach. The challenge is who do we challenge?
Right. Well, here's the game plan. So think about this. If we go back, that's why it's important to study history. And that's why the history that we learn in our churches. We learn in Vacation Bible School. I'm not, having somebody else. The progress that we've made, I've been a first on many occasions because of those who made the sacrifices for me, and who not those who gave me something, because they said, now it's time for you to have it. Yeah, I was the first and the first, but those are things that others who paved the way for me made that happen. But if we go back and look, how did the civil rights movement take place? Us.
Church.
How did Black Wall Street take place? Us. From 1865 to 1964, nobody did anything for us but us.
True.
All right. So now, why are we waiting on the government, or why are we waiting on somebody to say, well, do this for me, help this? Now, I think the government has to be responsible for incentivizing breaking up the Black family with welfare, all those things, because welfare was meant to be a bridge over troubled water, not a retirement plan.
There we go.
And that's the thing that we have to understand. I believe in helping, but when you look at the data from what happens with families and welfare, and how tied that is to the criminal justice system, it's almost like that's what the data says, not what Coach Hill says, what the data says. It's almost like you're getting welfare to go to prison to pay back our country. I mean, it's almost it's just a trade-off. So what we got to do, see, we never had that problem in 1940s, 50s, because I was in California speaking, and somebody said, well, Coach, I think you are discounting the effect of racism on these homicides. I said, really? I said, where you get that from? I said, I need to know where that data comes from, because I want to go find it. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if racism was the reason that we killed each other, and I said, during the Depression in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, we weren't killing each other at this rate.
No.
And I said, so what was the excuse? Why? And you know why? Because of the core values that we had from family, and how we, the Bible said, a man don't work, he don't eat. How we had that core village. I lost my mother. Lisa can tell you, my mother died. My father died after my first year out of high school. My mother had a stroke within 6 weeks, and I was basically had to go live with my grandmother. The whole community just came in and took care of me. That was the village. But today, everybody talks about a program, a mentor. We didn't know what a mentor or anything, but it was community.
It was community. Yeah, Lisa, Greg, you had a point.
That's why I was pointing my finger. I wanted him to tell exactly that story. Yeah. Because he experienced what a lot of these young Black men are experiencing now, but they might not have that community around them to lift them up, give them hope, and he had that. So, but Fitz, I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because that was a really challenging time for you, and yet you still maintained academic excellence. The lead star basketball player and football player could have gone on scholarship to any school he wanted to with either. But how did you personally, as we say, pull up our bootstraps and just move on and get it done? Describe what those people around you were like, and how you were able to move past that.
Well, one thing when we talk about pulling up bootstraps, my parents had given me boots to put on. And I think that's important to understand, because sometimes we ask people to pull up the bootstraps, and they don't have boots.
They have boots.
And so my parents had given, and that's what, Lisa knew my mother. My mother was a registrar, and I tell you, the one time that I was late for class, she came and got me out of class and asked, what the crap is wrong with you? That kind of accountability that that we had from the community, but being in the town, like a week after my father died, Miss Joyce White gave me a job at Quality Shoe Store because I needed to work until I could play football again. All right.
And what year was this, Coach?
This was in 1983, right after 3 weeks after my father died. She gave me a job. All right, because I needed to work, because we're on one income now. And
Mhm.
my dad didn't have a life insurance policy. So, you know, we had to make it work. And so then next thing after that, I get a call, and my mother have an aneurysm in church and never walk
Wow.
or talk again. And so 100% disabled until her death. And so I had Mr. Snyder, the bankers, Herman Thomas, the principal, everybody, you know, the school. When I came back at Washita, and when I moved back, you know, they worked with me to, you know, to understand what the challenges, as Lisa was talking about. And I tell kids this all the time. You know, I could have quit, and it was really tough. And I went through a lot.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things I wasn't supposed to do, but I had a support system around me, that uncles, you know,
Mhm.
who would say, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing that." My grandmother that I lived in with him, and I wasn't a great guy all the time, but
Yeah.
I had a great support system that gave me grace and allowed me to come back and realize what I was going through. You know, and I'm transparent now to be able to share. You know, I had to go through a lot of therapy. In fact, when I share with my therapist, you know, going through what I've been through, I mean, and realize that most people, you know, couldn't have come back from what I did, but I disassociated reality of what I went through and just stayed focused on the next play. That's what I always tell my players: play the
Sure.
next play. But God has been my rock and my foundation, and gratefully I had a relationship with him at a very early age. And even though when I would stray away, you know, I always had the accountability check with the word of God. And that's why I sit here talking to you all today.
Yeah. I love that. You know, you know, when you talk about the mentors, you know, one of the challenges today is that those guys are in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You talk about, you know, you were in 83. You could tell me how old you were in 83. I think
I'm 18, 19 years old.
I was 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 83, you take the crack epidemic or whatever you want to call it now, and you talk about how prior to that you had the Vietnam War, all that in the 70s. You had men coming home who couldn't come home because you infiltrated the system with the welfare system. No man could be in the house, or any remnants of a man
Yeah.
being in the house took you off the system. A lot of men, black men, came home, and then the drugs, you know, took over from heroin to crack to all those types of things, and then it was like it was infiltrated into the system as the local economy.
Yeah.
You know, after all the, you know, it was, when we look back on times where we thought were quite bad, I think they were bad from a physical perspective. I don't think they were necessarily bad from an economic perspective, because we owned everything.
Yeah. Right.
But then all of a sudden, when integration took place, a lot of those things went away. The things, because we stopped supporting the things that we owned.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So we damaged our own ecosystem. Then the ecosystem of drugs is implemented into our community, and then you see black men started, you know, dissipating or going away.
Right.
So it seems as if we can have this, we can have the fight, but I think that at some point we have to look deep into what the fight is and who the fight is with, to make those decisions of saying, okay, how are we going to fight? I know it's a collective, and it's gonna take Lisa. It's gonna take people that look like Lisa. It's gonna take people that look like you and I. It's gonna take a whole lot of people to really get down to the grit of how we fix this problem.
Well, let me say this, and I think this is important to look at how you hit on something, Gregory. That's really has such a dominant impact on where we are today.
Sure,
the breakdown of our resources, because if you look at the ethnicities of our country today, you know, if you're in California, you got Chinatown, you got different communities that are still in power today. A dollar stays in the in the Asian community 28 days.
Yep.
Dollar will stay in the Jewish community 16 days. Today, a dollar stays in the African American community 6 hours.
6 hours.
Unlike 4 years prior to integration. Black
right.
Wall Street, that's what was in power that went around. So that, as you mentioned, ecosystem has been fragmented. Okay. So when that happened, the reason that the civil rights movement, hypothetically speaking, from what research suggests to me, the reason that we were able to, when they say we shall overcome, all right. Well, the force behind that was a unified, holistic people. All right. It wasn't an affirmative action few. It wasn't a DEI select. It was 100% the whole 11% of the population of African Americans. So you couldn't say you can come in, all right, or you could come in. It was all of us. So that's how transformation took place, because we were unified in the struggle. We don't have that today. And that's the reason we have a permanent underclass, which is heavily impacted with Black men, which that's the reason. If I told you, if I said, okay, let's invest $5 billion in the 2% population, which is about 500,000 men that's responsible for the 50% homicides, why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
we sent $40 billion to Ukraine.
We said 100 billion to Ukraine.
So I'm here telling you. And so now you have to start looking at the prison system.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And you have to look. If in the prison system, the beds have gone from, you just mentioned in the 1980s, we were less than 300,000 prison beds in the United States of America.
Yep.
In the 21st century, we've been as high as 2.5 million. Okay. Yep. And you don't go to prison virtually.
That's right.
If you build it, you feel it.
It's a hotel.
And if you don't feel it, it's a bad business model.
That's right. It's a hotel. We need occupancy.
And so that's the reason we got to understand it's tied into our business system. So who's going? Well, these long-term sentences that you get from homicide and attempted homicides, where you pleading 30, you pleading 40, and you start stacking them. And you just saw the numbers that on the first and 45, you're talking about nearly 11,000 a year deaths. On average, 3 people will go to jail for each homicide.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're pleading. So now that's just for homicide. I'm not talking about attempted, where it's almost 35,000 people who are wounded, which then you get attempted first-degree battery, homicide. So you're talking about this prison population because of the guns. And the reason I'm saying guns, have you ever heard of a drive-by knifing? You don't kill people with a drive-by knife. It's a gun. And if you're sitting in the car, boys in the hood, if you're sitting in the car, you get charged. Even though you say, I didn't shoot it, you're charged. And so now everybody in the car, I call it the homicide grenade. All right? Because once it explodes, we're all getting something. Well, one is buried and the other one got a cell room. And we got to change it.
I want to hear both of you all's perspective on this, because one, you're from Arkansas. Can't knock that, can we?
Born and raised.
and you take the, from the system of the Little Rock 9. Okay, so you it's wild that Arkansas was on mainstream for things like this. And then you look at that. I want you all to think on that, and then just how that system worked. And then we think on just the Clinton administration. I mean, I really have to say it, because when I look at it and I say, okay, you go from this school system that's segregated, and people are sent there, and crazy to see Jerry Jones in the picture, and then you go from there to Bill Clinton being the president, and we can even talk about him and with the death penalty in Arkansas. I mean, I remember hearing about the case where the guy that was he barely knew the sun was up, but he was still executed. But when I look at these systems in play, and Lisa, I want you to just kind of walk us through from your perspective. How do when those things are in play and those people grow? One thing that I see in my community is people for some reason trust it. It's like, I'll say this on the show. Black people are some of the most forgiving people I've ever seen in my life. But a lot of times it's like we forgive, but we forget. Because I would say that with the Biden rules, when I saw his argument on the Senate floor about the crime bill, I'm like, what are we doing? So help me understand, just from that timeline, what it is that you saw. How did it look to you? And then from that perspective, what would be your advice to us as it relates to, those relationships that I believe are strained, but we still act like they're good? What's your thought?
So I go all the way back, and I mentioned this to you the other night when we chatted. I go back even before, well, not before the Little Rock Nine. Obviously, that was before my time. But and Fitz, I don't know if you remember this, but my dad was part of a group of consultants that helped to draft the plan to integrate students into Arkansas schools.
Oh, wow.
And I still have some of those pieces of paper that spell out or articulate, here is how you talk to these students. Here are the words you don't say. Here are the words you do say. Here's how to do this. And Daddy told me of quite a few school districts that they went into. And as soon as they walked into a school, the principal basically chased them out with a paddle saying, you're not coming into my school and telling me how to run my school and how to talk to these kids. And we're not doing this. And, and they all fought it tooth and nail. Sure. But the fact that in reading that and listening to my dad talk about this and a little bit more about me too, Fitz, I don't know if you remember, we considered Bobby Gray my brother. He and his wife got married at our house. A Black young man that my mom taught, and we just kind of adopted him into our family. He called my mom and dad, so I have a little bit more of an intimate relationship with people who don't look like me. But so going back to that time, Daddy said, I just don't understand why we have to articulate to human beings that we treat human beings like human beings.
Sure.
And it just has never made any sense to me, why people treat others so poorly is not a strong enough word, because we witnessed a lot of it growing up. I think I mentioned to you too. I remember the riot that broke out at the basketball tournament at OBU. And then we had a curfew for like 3 weeks of 8 o'clock because it was a all-Black school against Fitz. I can't remember. Was it UAPB was playing someone? I think I was probably in kindergarten, first grade, 6 years old. And was at that game with my dad. Do you remember that?
No, but I was talking about when we had the riot and they walked by. You remember that from Little Rock Central, from Central High School?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's we had that. And my mother was the first African American administrator to merge with the schools, and so what she's saying, we saw a lot of that,
so you got in the history, to the degree where how does it feel? And both of you can answer this. How does it feel when it looks like it's changing surface? But then the undercurrent is still like still a whole lot of things under there that kind of keeps it the same. How do we, how does that look? How does that, when you look at that, how does that register with you when you're like, man, I thought that was changing something, but now I see it didn't.
Well, here's the problem, and it's not only in Arkansas, but I'm telling in the United States of America, when you force people to do something, as I was on the state board, and we had a lot of in education here and dealing with discipline and dealing with things that I've seen even take place in equity, in access to education opportunities and things. And what I would tell people, you can legislate laws, but you can't legislate love. The heart. I'm gonna tell you. So you can make, and so when we integrate it, because we forced it, you had these stereotypical perceptions of people that it been ingrained. And so, it's something that it depowered us as a people from the leadership component, because here's the deal. You have, that's the reason when I go on the campus of Arkansas Baptist College, we have the oldest building in the state of Arkansas, Old Main, for educating African Americans. Is still there. And when I look, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. So I'm thinking about the ancestors coming here, and nobody was helping them. Nobody was doing anything for them. And so, you know, so you're taking a person coming off the plantation who can't read or write, and you're giving them the inspiration to for access to opportunities to teach and learn. I mean, to be taught. Well, and then what we do, we extrapolate the majority of those people out. And then we're really devaluing and say, you don't know what you're doing, rather than empowering. And I said, you know, as a former coach, is that, you know, it's kind of like what happened to Eddie Robinson in HBCUs. We want to always say that we're going to help make you better, rather than in Negro Baseball League. And I think when I was doing the study on Satchel Paige, now, do you realize Satchel Paige, they say the greatest baseball player of all time, okay? But the only reason he couldn't play in the Major League Baseball wasn't because he was qualified, it was because he was black.
That's
all right. So now what if the government would have invested in bringing in 3 Negro Baseball League teams to the Major League Baseball and empowering them, rather than decentralizing our power base, bringing one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One. Jackie Robinson, bringing one person in to see how we're going to work this out.
Yeah.
The Little Rock 9, we're bringing 9 to see that we're going to. Now, think about that.
Does that not look like corporate America?
I mean, so I'm saying. So now, but think about how Black Wall Street was built.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna be in Tulsa tomorrow, and looking at the museum and to walk through that and see that history. Nobody created that but the entrepreneurs and the Black minds themselves. You know, but now, you know, think about Hidden Figures. All right, who calculated that to send a man to the moon? Who taught her?
Black women. Yeah.
Black women. So I mean, so we sometimes undersell ourselves on what we're capable of doing, and then we say, well, we're gonna let you need to come over here and learn from how did we get here?
Sure.
Well, go ahead, Lisa. I know you can want to say something.
Well, so Fitz and I have had this conversation a lot. Being a former HR executive, growing up in a educational home, dad was a coach, you know, all that. Fitz is a coach. Giving opportunities to people who don't look like us, right? But at the same time, what you're saying, Fitz, is we need to provide the right opportunities for them to focus on their own growth, their own opportunities, their own things, and celebrate that, and not just trying to mix up the numbers. I mean, I hated it when my corporate office said, you have to have a certain percentage of this, this, and this. Like, what about the best people for the job? But giving all people, whatever they look like, the same opportunities, the same educational experience, the same opportunity for growth and development within corporate America, all those things. And I think what he and I experienced growing up, and with our class, you know, owed the class of 82 here. I never have really figured out, Fitz, why our class felt different about all of that. And one thing that I said to Greg the other night was I described the fact that the years would rotate with Homecoming Queen every other year. And our junior year of high school, our class petitioned the administration and the school board to change it. And they said no. And they still do it to this day, but now it's a minority group. It's not just African American, but it's white one year and minority group the next. And how is that, Fitz, how is that doing what you just described?
Yeah. Well, see, a couple things in America that you realize, that's why the term is called minority. Because oftentimes when you're a minority, you have to be intentional to be inclusive, and so we knew back. But to Lisa's point, I was a student council president of my school, and we're probably 30% Black, 20. So I never lost. 7th grade student council president, 8th grade class president. So, but I learned racial politics in Arkadelphia. I knew that I couldn't date a white girl. I knew because I knew that the black girls would look down on that, and I knew that that this community would not like that. So I just emotionally intelligently knew how to navigate that, and to realize, hey, I want to lead our class. And so, yes, to us, it wasn't really a racial deal because we had seen opportunities where the cream, the best person emerged out of it. So for our class, we're thinking we don't need that, but I'm not sure every class was like us.
Agreed.
That's right.
So I hear, I'm listening, and I hear something, and I want both of you to think on this. But when we say majority and minority, aren't those terms of race?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's basically saying something without saying it. It's like, okay, because it's like if all people who have color are minorities, then majority always is referred to as white, correct?
But it's not always that way now. I think it depends on the settings that you put yourself in.
Oh, I've never heard it any other way.
Well, if we're talking like a global term, yes, I agree with you. But and I guess that's John and I put ourselves in places where we're the minority most of the time.
Sure.
Now, is my minority experience the same as yours would be if the tables were turned? Maybe not. Probably not.
Probably not, because oftentimes when you're dealing with that from this narrative, it is, as an underclass, it's associated with poverty.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Exactly.
But here's I want to say something about the minority and the majority.
Okay.
And this is what I learned from studying this from my book Crackback and looking at the what I call the blind sides of access to opportunities for Black football coaches in predominantly white institutions. Is that you find this is that Black coaches are evaluated collectively and white coaches are evaluated individually. That's the difference between minority and majority. So as a minority, you have this we're speaking for each other. If somebody sees us, first thing they do, they look at us and say, those Black men. All right. And so as a minority, because it's a small population, the normal cognitive process is to group and categorize to assess, which is just normal. Okay. And so the anomalies of that is that when you look and see one of our 3 African-American male men involved in the criminal justice system. So when you look at, if we added one more to us, Greg, those statistics, what they call rational discrimination, are true.
Yeah.
All right. And so what we have to do is, that's what I work every day to defy these negative stereotypes that have created, because I have to ask my own self question. And when I'm talking to young Black men, I have to say, are they really stereotypes if they're true?
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you.
And I'm just being factual.
And I saw your book. I want to share that. We'll share that with our people. The Crackback.
Fitz, I found mine in storage the other day. I still have it.
Well, yes. I've been asked to. It's really interesting. Actually, the numbers are down since I wrote the book, and I've been asked to do a follow-up. So in 2 years, I'm doing an addendum to Crackback. But I had a deal with a couple of writers, and they were asking about during COVID, why have the numbers decreased? And I said, well, I don't have the data, as to back up my hypothesis. I said, but I'm going to call it the Obama effect. And they said, the Obama effect? I said, yes. I said, well,
do tell.
Yeah, they said, give me a little background on that. I said, you remember when Charlie Strong and Kevin Sumlin, when they were led Blue Blood program, University of Texas and Texas A&M, all right? Following those hires for the first, I think 2015 was the first year that not one Black head football coach was hired in this 21st century.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, and they said, well, what is that relevant? I said, well, once you reach a certain plateau, you don't think you have to be intentional to be inclusive. And I said, And if you looked at, I'm of the belief that, you know, and things are changing gradually now. But after President Obama won the election, then President Trump wins. Well, that's the Obama effect of, I don't think that probably in our country would have happened with President Trump had President Obama not been the president. So that's why I call it the Obama effect. And so now when you see things decreasing and less inclusivity, because when people said, well, we don't need to be intentional. If a black man is president of the United States of America on his own merit, then everything's good.
You know, the sad part about that, Coach, is that a lot of black people started having the narrative that since we had a black president, that you could do anything you wanted to do.
Exactly.
If it's possible for him, it's possible for all.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we were more unemployed than we had ever been.
And see, and you realize that's and when you start talking about corporate America and you start looking at the representation and all those things, when you start looking at board positions and those type of things, the lack of inclusion in those areas had been met just because you had one person leading the nation.
Sure. And you still see a lot of that. I mean, you still see a lot of stuff where the inclusion piece is so missing. I mean, when you think about that, I think I looked up some stats on just management jobs and how we're so missing even in management. In my career, I think I have maybe sat across the table, and I'm 50. I've probably sat across the table 2 times in my career to interview with a black person for a job. Twice.
Right.
In my whole 30-year work career, twice.
But you know what's so interesting to see, but go back to thinking about Negro Baseball League, go back thinking about Eddie Robinson, historically black college, go back and think about how empowering our communities were. My mother, Peak High School, right there in the community where Lisa, how the communities were there. And that this is what we're talking about, Greg. You know, and it's not what we intended to happen, but that power base of Black Wall Street, all those things were fractured when forced integration took place without a transition plan to continue empowering. And so now the black businesses that, I think in Little Rock right now, there are only 4 businesses that were open prior to integration that remain open today.
Wow.
Right? So if you start looking at that, all right. So now to your point, once you start having the dollar leaving, then that's what I say. What happens when the neighbor leaves? It becomes the hood. That's what it is. So we have money puts the neighbor back in the hood. And that's what you have to be intentional about it. And that hadn't happened because we were saying, well, we can go everywhere. We free. This is what we can do. We're not being discriminated against. But what happened, we depowered ourselves because the Major League Baseball, and I keep bringing this up because the stories are just so incredible, how they would fill the stadiums and how, what you see now when you see the Bayou Classic is what you saw with Grant. That's $160 million economic engine in the city of New Orleans.
That's
when
real.
2 HBC, that's the power.
That's the power.
That's the economic power that's there that has to be intentionally driven in other phases and not just 1 week.
I agree. Could have had that at Jackson State, in my opinion. But go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say, I want to speak to the economic piece too, because Fitz, I remember you owning businesses in Arkadelphia in communities that were predominantly Black. And I can remember, and I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the show because you did not touch on the Dr. Hill, Mr. Hill thing. And I hope you got what I meant by that. When we were in junior high, we were in 3rd grade.
3rd grade.
And 3rd grade school was just, I can't remember my directions. Would that be west of Peak?
Yeah,
was
it
that
was west.
No. Yeah, okay.
East,
Peak was
east,
west.
East,
Peak
east.
was west.
Yeah, Peak was west.
And my mom worked at Peak Middle School, which used to be the Black school in Arkadelphia. So she forgot to come pick me up from school. Okay. And I thought, I'll just walk. And I'm sorry if you're hearing that sound. John is opening the garage door and it's right under where I'm sitting. So she forgot to pick me up. And so and Fitz sat and I sat across from each other, Miss Jones' class in 3rd grade. And I thought, well, I'll just walk to Peak because she's a teacher. I'll just walk there. And Peak sat right in the heart of the Black community in Arkadelphia.
Yeah.
And at 3rd grade, I was not afraid to walk there by myself until I got halfway down the sidewalk and this guy and his buddies walk up to me and he grabs my arm. He says, "What's my name?" Because in class he would say, "Call me Mr. Hill. You better call me Mr. Hill." Squeeze my little skinny old arms.
That is hilarious.
And now he's Dr. Hill.
Now he's Dr. Hill.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Now I get it.
But you know, my point is, I was not afraid to walk there.
And we made sure she got to Peak.
Yeah.
Yes,
100.
you did.
After she called me Mr. Hill.
No doubt. So you know, we got a few minutes. I'll let Lisa go first and just just give some closing statements, and then we'll let Dr. Hill close out. So Lisa.
Well, I just want to, I'm not sure what your audience looks like, but I want to give a shout out to people who look like me.
Sure.
And to say that I think it's our responsibility to help empower all people, but especially those that maybe don't have hope and who are living in poverty. And that's part of what John and I have done in the neighborhood of Mars Hill, which is if all of the kids in the elementary schools in our neighborhood were still, if they had the free lunch program for those that qualified, right now they give all free lunches to all kids. So there's not that stigma attached to those kids. But if they still did that, 98% of our kids in our elementary schools are poverty level. Sure. And but in serving this community, we wanted to submerge ourselves into it at the same time, not just show up. We're not a savior. We're not trying to fix things. We're not trying to tell them what to do. We want to live with them and create community with them, have them at our dinner table, break bread with them. And so we moved here too. And it's been the most beautiful thing. And people thought we were crazy. But I want to encourage people because our community is probably creeping up on about 40% Hispanic, and the rest white mainly. But I want to encourage people who look like me though, to not be afraid to venture into those arenas and into those situations, into those relationships and those friendships that can be created by doing it. So
yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll see you at AJ's Lounge. Absolutely.
Yeah. If you were in town, you would love AJ's. Oh my goodness. Well, and so I did want to say too, so back in our day, this 1982, we were listening to Shalimar, Lakeside, The Whispers.
So you came down for Morris Day.
Greg, I'll send you a picture. I was on stage with some other ladies at Morris Day in the time, thanks to this guy.
All right. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Lisa. Coach, take us home.
Hey, I just, thank you for this opportunity to really bring awareness to the Black male homicide epidemic in the United States of America, where I said we've, been focusing on our lives mattering, but I want to make sure that we understand that our young men are dying every day and we're remaining crickets. And, I want to leave because people say, well, why is this? Well, there are 7 things that the research shows in First and 45 that we've been able to identify that we must address, and everybody can address this in their own manner, in their own community. We must look at the teenage pregnancy problem within the impoverished community. We must look at the lack of fathering in our underserved communities. We must look at the trauma-filled early childhood experiences that we're getting surrounding guns, that the gun violence is taking place, and our kids are growing up with post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they're ending up responding to ways that are leading to these prison sentences. Elementary school suspension. I was just in the juvenile detention center on Friday, and it's amazing that the overrepresentation of multiple elementary school suspensions from young men that second and third grade are being sent home back to the trauma-filled homes and not learning to read, and which then are putting them grade behinds. And now, 60% of prisoners do not have high school diplomas, and so we're sending them to prison to get their GED. So failure to complete high school, and then, man, no hope. I said people with no hope are the ones who usually smoke dope because they're trying to numb their pain to stay away from reality. So it's just important that, hey, you find the lane to play you can run to get in. Those are 7 things that we look for, that there's something for everybody to do. Churches, hey, if we can stop people from having babies without, as the Lord prescribed for us to, then that's gonna curtail the problems that we're having young men to become fathers as they're supposed to do. A Proverbs 22:6, and train up a child the way he should go, and when he get old, he will not depart from. That's the game plan that I'm trying to call to put people in the game.
I love it. Well, I want to thank both of you. Hey, Doc, we'll be in touch. I've got your email. I'll shoot you my number. I know how to get in touch with Lisa. And man, I want to get you my book. I have a book. It's called Utopia Black. It focuses on the Black Wall Street Massacre. And I want to get that to you. So, man, I appreciate you both. It's been an excellent show, and I look forward to speaking to both of you again. So thank you so much, y'all. Y'all have a great one.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Man, that has been just excellent. When it's all said and done, it's like we got to get people from everywhere to talk about a lot of things that go on in our communities, because when it's all said and done, it's not just local. It's not just local. I mean, it's national and it's international. And so we just gotta, do our part to make sure we get things right in this world. So, man, which leads us to our verse of the day. And so, because again, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Doc. I guess I got a bunch of names for them now at this point, because we're gonna be talking, man. It's so good, man. When you talk to seasoned Black men and you get to hear their perspectives, it's just a special thing to hear from them. So nonetheless, let's see. So our verse of the day, we're going to come from Romans chapter 8, verse 31. And it reads, "What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?" And man, he is for us. I put a post out. I said, no matter what I go through, no matter the struggles, I've been a person who has been cast away. People believe they've thrown me away. People have ignored me. People have said my voice was minimal. I've been called a shock jock. I've been called dumb and dumber. I've been called a lot of things. But when you realize that you're utilizing the gifts that God gave you, when you realize that he is in control, it's like when you realize in the 23rd Psalm, he says, "Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil," which feeds into this. Because all of a sudden, when you look, it's like they're in your presence to watch your anointing. And it also feeds into that thing that says, if God is for you, who can be against you? It's like, walk in that, breathe that, live that, because you're called to do a mighty, mighty, mighty work. And man, when you do it, it's like, it doesn't matter who hates it, because it's like being a great student. It's like you don't do nothing that you do in that school is for the grade of your peers. Everything you do is for the grade of the teacher. And when God is giving out grades, I want to make sure that I'm getting straight A's. This has been your brother, man. I've enjoyed it. Listen, we'll be back again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been No Apologies, Please with your brother, Greg Meriweather. Have a great one. Peace.